Welcome to the Decentralized Opportunity Podcast. I'm your host, Tanner Lytle, here with your other host.
Wyatt Carson. Good evening, Tanner.
Hello.
Oh man, so we had some fun interviews recently.
Absolutely.
The Metaverse one honestly has been really gaining some awesome traction. There's debates going on. You can find the people who love it, people who get it, the people who abhor it and think it's the dumbest thing ever. But it's just fun to see other people's reaction. Even in our friends group, we had some pretty strong negative reactions to the metaverse, and I'm trying to make it a point to not just debate it, because debate's pointless, but it is fascinating seeing all of the perspectives coming out about it, right?
Well, I always tell people, did you listen to the podcast? Because you can really tell who hasn't and who's just like firing on in the comments on YouTube.
Oh yeah, but either way, it's really been fun. You know what, the there's uh even bad publicity is publicity type situation. I don't know if I believe that, but it has been interesting to see the reactions. But Tanner, what are we going to talk about this week? We talked about it a couple days now, and I originally didn't really vibe with the idea, but the more it sat with me, the more I realized that honestly, a lot of what I do embodies the concept. So, uh, explain to the audience what are we going to talk about?
Yeah, so I got a new book recently from Morgan Housel called Same as Ever. And it's all these different concepts of people are constantly changing situations are constantly changing, but there's certain elements of people that will always stay the same. So I may act the same way as somebody from ancient Greece would act in specific situations, even though technology's changed, how we live is completely changed, but there's certain core elements of us that are forever the same. And in the later part of the book, there was just a line or a little part of it, which I'll read a quote here, that was talking about core principles. And man, it really struck home because you were talking about some topics and I've been working on some different things and it just all kind of clicked for me. And we're like, man, this would make a great topic for today. So I'm going to read the quote real quick and then we'll get your take on it. So, and what it's talking about is core principles in relation to any kind of task, role, career, or piece of your life. So, quote, what you need to identify is the core principles. Generally, there are 3 to 12 of them that govern any field. The millions of things you thought you had to memorize are simply just various combinations of simple core principles. So, that portion of that really talks about how in any endeavor that you're doing, you feel like there's a language, there's this huge wall that you're going to have to overcome and learn before you get really, proficient in whatever those things. And actually, the biggest thing is you just need to distill it down to its core elements and then focus on those and you'll be able to get pretty far. So what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, to break it down Barney style, the core principle, you know, process is simply a way of approaching problems by breaking them down into their most basic elements.
Yeah.
And
It's
this
like
could be
how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
that's the concept of core principles. That's it,
Mhm.
that is absolutely it. So I did some research and I started looking into this concept, and I found an old example and new example and modern example of core principles being used in really impactful ways. The first example I could find of someone really embodying the core principle as a way of thinking and operating is with Aristotle,
Mhm.
one of the fathers of
Love it.
Western philosophy. We all heard about him. We all studied him in school. But Aristotle, he was known for advocating for this concept of first principles, which is just a method of uh, questioning assumptions to get down to a root cause and kind of bare bone structure of a problem. It allowed him to kind of get rid of the unnecessary clutter and distractions of an argument in philosophy and get down to the root cause. Here are the four things we're actually arguing about, not what this person did who might relate to this problem. Another thing Aristotle did was really he started to delve into sciences before sciences were really truly understood. And he was one of the first people to ever take animals and start categorizing them by their characteristics, which is exactly core principles. I mean, Darwin lived and breathed and became successful off of Aristotle's philosophy of grouping and breaking things down into simple ways. I love that. I thought that was fascinating. But then the second one I actually learned in the classes I'm taking right now. So I'm doing an assignment right now, which was on business models. And in it, we had to read the official first Tesla business model, and then we had to read the second one. And if you know anything about Elon Musk, or if you're kind of a fan of his style, you'll know that his original Tesla plan was called the Master Plan. And then the second one was called the Master Plan Part Deux. It's very Elon Musk, I know. But I thought about it. I was doing my assignments at mulling over this idea for this podcast episode, and it clicked with me because the thing that made Elon Musk's first master plan, horrible name, but the thing that made it successful is his plan involved only 3 steps to start Tesla. That's it. The first one was, I'm going to make a sports car that's going to be high end, and I'm going to sell to exclusive customers and make some money. I'm going to roll that. The second one was, I'm going to roll that the Tesla Roadster money and try and make a cheaper EV. And then I'm going to take that money from the cheaper EV and I'm going to roll it into making an even cheaper EV. That was his entire business plan for the first one. That was his master plan. Make a sports car, sell it to rich people. Take that money, make a cheap electric vehicle. Take that money and make an even cheaper electric vehicle. And then we can go in. His master plan part deux is not any more complicated. And don't get me wrong. Once again, yes, all of these things have intricacies behind them. Tesla didn't just build an entire empire off of 3 steps, but he broke it down to its most simple parts. The master plan part deux is basically, I'm going to take all the money I made from cars and I'm going to invest in solar roofs and I'm going to expand solar batteries. And all of it boils up to this kind of grand ideology of eco centering his business around eco conservation and trying to provide more energy efficient means to run common day things. And so I was doing this thing, and first off, Tanner, you and I have talked. I've never been an Elon Musk fanboy, but I was like, son of a bitch, this makes sense. But so there you are, an old and a new example of this basic fundamental principle.
Yeah, I love your examples because both of them just show um, you if you can really go think deeply about a problem and discover what are the fundamental elements of those that you should focus on. And I think of that as your core principles of whatever task you're doing are really the things that make the most impact on if focused on, right? And everything else is just kind of like frills and doesn't matter. It's whatever that gets to the point, it's the meat, it's the purpose. If you think about like you want to read a book, and one of the reasons like we kind of hate business books in many different ways is they only have like one or two good nuggets put into them, but they milk it out over like 300 pages. And
Have you ever
so
tried to read a recipe online?
oh my gosh, those are the perfect example, right? Because it's this like
hmm
15-minute blog post to get through
When
the
I was 6
algorithm.
years old, my
Mhm.
mom decided she wanted green beans one Thursday afternoon. It's obnoxious.
Yeah, and the actual meat of it is just like 2 inches on the page, like 3 quarters that you have to try to fight through. And so much of our lives is like that, right? So much of our lives is equal to a like an online recipe. You just want to go through and get the big thing out, but we have so much fluff and so much distraction and all of those things. And just trying to figure out like, okay, no, I just need to get good at these 3 things or these 6 things or these 12 things. And that is what I will be spending 80% of my time doing and get the most results from that. But so oftentimes we only spend, the reverse on the stuff that matters and we get caught in all the frills or we're trying to pump ourselves up to look better and fluff all of the work that we're doing and pad it with things that are just kind of not as important. And then we wonder why we're not getting the results that we feel like we should. And it's because we're not actually focusing on the things that matter. So Gosh, it's such a good concept
It
that
really is.
I love it. And
Y-
yeah,
So another thing that really I had to kind of slap myself on the side of the head when I really started focusing on these core principles. My entire career is boiled down into 5 principles.
okay.
So I talk about lean a lot. It's my passion. And if I got on my computer and looked at templates and other things that I can use in my job, I have hundreds of things that I could do in my job given whatever project I'm focusing on. But lean breaks down into 5 core principles. They're even called the principles of lean. And I was like, oh, so the principles of lean are specify value, identify the steps in the value stream, create flow, establish pull, and seek perfection. And 13 years in my career and hundreds of templates and hundreds of different jobs and projects I've worked on, every single thing I've ever done boils down into those 5 steps.
Yeah. And it's true. It's just everything that you've done is just a combination of those 5 steps. And you think
Mix and
that you're
match.
onto something new and innovative, and you're like, actually, that's, 2, 3, and 5 may just kind
Mhm.
of boil together in different percentages, right?
Right. I think people have this misconception, and it's kind of a logical fallacy, probably, that has an official name, but I can't identify. People like to think that their jobs or their tasks or their lives are more complicated than they might actually be. And especially in the career world, it's a pretty commonplace thing for people to overestimate how complicated their job is. And this is not, I'm not trying to insult anyone and say that your job's easy because, like, lawyers, doctors, things like that. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying you're making it more complicated in your head sometimes.
Yeah,
Is that a
absolutely.
possibility?
100%. Well, I've been thinking about the podcast a lot, and you can get caught up in all the analytics and all the things that we should be doing and what other people are doing to get success and how you want to do those. But if we boil down to the podcast into just a few core elements, it's, the curiosity and discovery that we put into it to find what topics. You build a topic and you tell a story that resonates with an audience, and you just do it consistently. I don't know how many much more core principles there are than just trying to have good storytelling on an interesting topic for people who regularly listen to us or might want to listen to the same stuff that we find interesting.
Yeah,
I don't know. What do you
absolutely.
think some core principles for our podcast would be? Let's do this little diagnosis on the fly.
Ooh, okay, okay. So I've been in a big root cause analysis space in my head because of my
Okay.
job. But so the core principles of our podcast, I believe, are consistency. We're pretty darn good at that. And it's something that is important to both you and I. Um, Consistency, interest. And what I mean by interest is, sorry, audience, but we don't always judge our podcast episodes off of what we think people are going to like. Originally, we did. But something we've discussed before, Tanner, is, as long as we're interested in it, we're going to find our audience, right?
So would that be authenticity more so than
Ooh,
interest?
I like that. Okay, so we have consistency, authenticity, and I made the first two. You got to help me out now.
I think storytelling's a big part of it.
Ooh.
I really do. Like the moments that people come to me are we tell stories about our lives or have guests tell stories, or we're sharing stuff that happened to our friends or different things like that, and those are what really resonate with people. It's not just us spitting facts, and
Mhm.
while there's a few good nuggets here and there, it's the relatability and the storytelling aspect of it, I think, that really has been successful for us.
I love that. And oh man, I just thought of another one, good one, but it slipped my mind because I was writing these down. I think this is a fantastic exercise that a lot of people could do for their own hobbies, interests, and jobs. So we have consistency, we have authenticity, we have storytelling. Oh, and we have, I don't know how we could word this, but I'm just looking at it as improvement. We are always getting better. And, our listeners may disagree, but if you go back and watch our first episode, we suck. Um, and I think we've just developed a smoother flow. We're comfortable talking into this microphone now. And it's been really cool to see both of us get better at this public slash non-public speaking thing that we're doing.
Yeah. I agree with that. The improvement, the exponential improvement, the compounding portion of that has been really, really helpful. And just the reps, and part of that comes through consistency.
Hmm.
One thing that people wouldn't see from the outside, because it's not necessarily things that we talk about in the episode, but probably are a good principle for us as well, is how we streamline things. So the optimization, perhaps. I've had quite a few people recently talk to me about like how can I start a podcast? I've been thinking about doing it and this, and but I'm sure it's too expensive and it's too complicated. And I'll tell you a little dirty secret right now to the audience. We only spend a couple hours a week on this because we've got the right tools. We uh, have our topics and we have these things. Sure, we think about them a lot beforehand, but the actual like meat and potatoes of it. And then the
Hmm.
editing portion, we've started using really cool AI tools and other automations to help us edit these and post these and build
Oh,
all the other stuff, because beforehand, it would have taken 8, 10 plus hours to get something produced to make to the audience. And we don't have enough time to do that every week to do it consistently. And so it
hmm,
might come back to consistency. It may be a sub part of that.
hmm.
But we have made this a pretty frictionless process so we can really enjoy and focus on the parts that matter and not get stuck in the minutia of the having to spend hours and hours in a video editor clipping every little thing, or writing really long going through transcripts to write show notes and all
Yeah.
those pieces. We can just automate it and do it, and that has been a huge like lowering of the bar so we can make a much better product for that.
Yeah, it seemed pretty daunting when you look at a podcast and you think, okay, I've got to get all the equipment, I've got to record, I have to have a topic people are going to care about, and then I have to download it, and then I have to edit the audio, and then if it's a video podcast like ours, then you have to edit the video, and you've got to make your um, thumbnails, and then you've got to write your show notes, and then you've got to link everything, and you've got to update your. It The list is extensive when you look at it like that. But at the end of the day, we can boil down our process of making this podcast as what's our topic? Record. You do good work on the thumbnail. I'll give you that one. But then we delegate the responsibilities. So you edit the audio and make the thumbnail. I write the show notes and post it on social media. Like we delegate the responsibilities, and it's lowered the bar is a really good way of describing that. It makes takes it from something super daunting where we could may have never started to completely manageable because we broke it down and we shared the effort.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
that's just really kind of the whole idea behind this core principles thing, right? It's like, what is it you want to accomplish, and what are the main things that you need to focus on? Another example, so the podcast was one, and I love what the topics that you said there, or the points. Another one that's been a big part for both of us lately has been our fitness journey and losing weight and building muscle. And it's like, what's the core principles of losing weight? uh, Expel more than you intake. I mean, it's basically the main core principle of that. And
Consistency as well.
yeah, and
Yep.
then goes consistency. And you always think about like, oh no, man, I need these supplements or these special gym memberships or this equipment, or I need this new program and I need all these things and this app to measure my thing. Because I fall in this trap all the time. Black Friday was there, and I was like, oh, I need like one of those rings to monitor my sleep for this optimum health stuff. And it's like,
Yeah.
all of that stuff just doesn't really matter. It's just different points of these core principles, which again is, yeah, consistency, strain your body so it can rebuild itself. So in some ways you're tearing it apart, and then just consume less than you intake on the junk. And that's the biggest thing. If you want to grow, you eat more than you
Yep.
take, than you expel. And if you want to lose, you eat less. And if you just focus it on the core elements of stuff, it's pretty darn manageable. Like, it's pretty darn manageable.
Yeah. So you and I have been asked several times over the course of the last year, how do I start a podcast? How do I start a business? It could be those giant vague questions. And when you ask a question like that, you're instantly going to be kind of scared and overwhelmed with everything. I mean, how do you make a business? What kind of crazy question is that? But everyone in the world's asked it to themselves before. And then you've got the same thing. Oh, you've got to come up with an idea. You've got to make a business plan. You got to do your market research. And then you got to get a website. And then you've got to get funding and blah, 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 blah. And the list just keeps going on and on and on. And if you list all of that out, if you Google how to start a business right now, you're just going to close it, never start that damn business because it's too much.
Yeah. Well, and even if you do all of those tasks, Wyatt, you're nowhere closer to succeeding because you're not
No,
answering the core principles of
no.
what it is. What
Yep.
is the problem that you're solving?
Yeah.
And then is there people who would buy that? And you so
What's
much
the
of the
problem? Is there an audience, and are you the person to deliver it?
there it is.
That's
100%.
those are the
A-
questions you need to ask yourself.
And how many times have you been into a business and in your job and 99% of the focus is not on that. It's on
Absolutely
all the other
not.
things, right?
So, okay, I'm gonna let the audience in. So before we hit record tonight, Tanner and I spent like half an hour just talking, which we do. Uh, but I was talking about how I was reading this blog about this lady who was kind of ranting about how she loves her job. She loves what she does, but she hates the job that is on top of her job. And I believe she called it her meta job. And what she meant by that was the things like, I've got to manage my quarterly goals and OKRs. I've got to write my reviews. I have to take this new training by HR. I have to attend the staff meeting. I have to do these things. And she, at the end, she was like, I just wanted to come and do the job that you hired me to do, not the meta job that you require of me because it's part of your business. And man, I felt that, and I've been feeling that for a while myself. Is I love what I do, but sometimes you get mired in the muck and the crazy, politics sometimes, and it can be a huge source of burnout. So honestly, this conversation is really kind of helping me focus on those core principles of what do I do in my job? Why do I find value in my job? What do I like about it? And that other stuff is not going to go away because I think like this, but it's going to help me focus on the positive aspects that I find value in it.
Well, going back to our podcast example, the way we've automated things really get rid of all of that fluff that would have been friction. But if you're in a company or you have a company yourself that's of a certain scale and there's a certain amount of bureaucracy and processes and things that you have to kind of fill in, that's what makes it more hard to be consistent because you have those friction points and you have those things. And so you're not going to focus on making, in our case of podcast, the best episode you possibly can, or the best thumbnail you possibly can, or consistently recording every week and putting something out there because you're just dealing with, all of the extra burden that comes with it. And it seems easier when it's in your control and it's something smaller and it seems more obvious, but it does as it scales and kind of weaves its way through different avenues. It's the same problem. It's just at a different complexity level, right? Different
Sure.
scale.
Absolutely. So, okay, outside of podcasts and corporate life and even small business, in your personal life, how can you use this concept of core principles, Tanner, to help yourself?
Yeah. Well, we touched on weight loss or fitness, and you can do any of that. Like you can pick any part of your life, really. You could pick it on your wardrobe. What are the things that you really need, and what is just fluff or things that Instagram is trying to sell to you? Uh,
Mm, yeah.
I mean, you can do it on pretty much anything, but I mean, for me, we have lots of hobbies, both you and I. We did an entire podcast episode talking about why hobbies are great and you need lots and lots of them. And this past week for me, I had a really nice, like monumental milestone. I feel like in my learning to tattoo.
Mm-hmm.
And from that, I got to work on real people for the first time, which was
Yay.
really, really exciting and really fun. And I feel really blessed for the people who trusted me with their skin and their bodies to put things on them that's permanent. Working with the very first time, but man, we created some really cool stuff, and so I was really happy with that. But I was trying to think back back, especially when you're a little overwhelmed and you're a little intimidated because it's the first time you're doing. It's like, what really matters here? And in case of making a tattoo, it's like pulling a really nice, clean line at the right depth so the ink actually goes in and doesn't go too deep, and putting at the right value in the right spot so you can make a beautiful image. And if I just focused on the line and where it needed to be and how the overall composition worked, and at that moment, you're not worried about all the little things that, kind of can potentially intimidate you or scare you or throw you off your game. And you're not worried about all the other stuff like, well, am I going to be posting this on social media and how will this respond and how am I going to do this and how do I handle all the bookings and all this? Like, none of that matters. You just focus on the thing at hand. And from that, doing a good job, then everything else will spawn from it, right? So
Mhm.
again, it's just focusing your mind and your effort on what are the few things that really matter on whatever endeavor you're doing.
Yeah. So, and I just want to restate this because I can see the YouTube comments already. Just because you break down a complex task like tattooing, it's not simple. Those other things about are you going to post it on social media and how you're going to get more bookings, those don't go away because you break it down into those core principles. What happens is you are able to focus on what is important at the moment. I would be quite frustrated if my tattoo artist, I have a couple tattoos, I've got like 4 or 5. If my tattoo artist, while doing my tattoo, was sitting there trying to focus on how to get more bookings and not how to get that straight line on my skin that's going to be there for the rest of my life, right? Those problems don't go away because you break things down into core principles. What happens is it allows you to compartmentalize what's important at that very moment.
Yeah. Well, doesn't say it's going to be easy
Right.
or by any means. And that's the thing, like tattooing is ridiculously hard. And that's why there's a bunch of people with a bunch of jacked up tattoos. And that's why you can have people who've been doing it for a long time and still don't do very good work because it's very, very difficult. And
Mhm.
the same goes with, again, losing weight. It seems obvious, right? Like, oh, you just eat less than you and you exercise more. Man, as someone who's lost a lot of weight and gained a lot of weight back and fluctuated back and forth, it's not easy. But it can be simple in some aspect of understanding the container, but the actual minutia and the actions of it can be extraordinarily complex. Or
Yeah.
take your Tesla example. Oh, you just have to make a sports car for rich people. Duh. Well, how the heck are you going to do that? That's extremely complicated to execute. But it's as long as you're focused, laser focused, and that's how Elon Musk, I feel like, has really just blew everyone else out of the water because his ability to just unbelievably focus on stuff for very short amount of time in his day, but can execute on those is just absolutely unparalleled. If you can do that, then that's your superpower. Because again, everyone else is just probably pretty distracted.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Because once again, his first master plan was I'm going to make a sports car. I'm going to roll that money into cheaper electric vehicle. I'm going to roll that money to an even cheaper electric vehicle. That was his first plan. Now the dude has satellites and rockets. Like, love him or hate him, that's damn impressive. So he, it's not that simple to make a rocket and put satellites into space, but the steps you do to break it down and help understand and make it fit in your head can be simple.
Yeah. Well, and probably a lot of the distractions are actually the easy stuff, right? And that's why you're probably
Sure.
drawn to them. It's a little bit of like procrastination in a way because you're like, oh, I have like YouTube. Oh, if I download this extension and I can run this type of like algorithm to make my headlines this better and I can do this, then I should be getting lots of views and all that. It's like, no. It goes back to
Mhm.
again making content that people want to listen to or watch or value, and you do that consistently, and you from that, I mean, there's it's the 80/20. That's the 80%. The
Yeah.
20% is how can you game the algorithm to at least get some exposure so people can discover you. I don't even
Mhm.
say game is the right word, but just play within the confines of whatever the rules are at the time. But it's the fundamentals that truly matter. It doesn't matter how good your basketball shoes are if you don't know how to dribble a ball.
You could have the most amazing marketing plan in the world that's guaranteed to make you millions of dollars, but it won't go anywhere if you don't have a product.
Yeah. Well, and
Mhm.
like I really like that example we said earlier with starting a business. You can come up with a name, you can get the great logo, you can build a website, you can register it, and you do all that. But if you don't have those core 3 fundamentals, what were they, Wyatt?
It was, oh man.
I'll have to go back and
I said something really awesome and now it's
I'm gonna
gone.
clip that. It was really
Yeah.
good.
I
And the
I
fact
don't
that I thought
remember.
it was like something you read from your textbook and you just knew off the top of your head that you came up with that in the moment is fantastic. So I have to write that down.
Well, yeah. Well, now that I look silly because I can't repeat it.
We'll
But
just like clip in like this moment and
brr,
then
brr, 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 brr. What's the problem? Is there an audience and are you the person to deliver it? Anyways, no, so really to wrap up this conversation, because I don't think we need to beleaguer the point, is anything, even complex, really, really complex stuff can be broken down. And when you are able to break it down into smaller steps, it's more digestible. Once again, how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. Don't focus on all this extraneous stuff. That time will come. Right now, focus on what's important and break it down into simple, easy to digest things.
yeah. And I think you'll in some way understand and feel when you're misaligned because
Mhm.
then you're not going to have that same amount of focus or fulfillment or happiness that you're getting from it because you're just again working on fluff. And just to end the point, we can end the episode, but I'm just thinking back to those the examples of the business book. It's like most of the time you're just kind of losing, you're not really paying attention in the chapters because you understand inherently that it's just fluff, or you don't finish it because you got the point already. And you can kind of take that same kind of example and put it into almost so much of your day. Because if you're
Oh
just
yeah.
kind of checking out and you're not really engaged or you're not doing that, you're like, okay, this is just the fluff. Let me get back to the actual things that matter to me. And
Hmm.
I think that's a good kind of, gauging a way of gauging everything so you can kind of keep yourself on track.
Absolutely. So once again, the book is called "Same as Ever" by Morgan Housel. I'll post a link to it in the show notes because I use AI to generate my show notes and then I
Mhm.
manually review them. Yes, it's true. The audience now knows my secret. But yeah, check out the book if you're interested. He is a great writer. I've read his Psychology on Money book before. Did I say that right?
Yep. Psychology
Yeah,
of money.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, and is I haven't read The Same as Ever, but he is a phenomenal writer, so I'm definitely going to read this one. It's in my Audible collection right now. I ordered it this morning.
Sweet. So we'll have to revisit it once we you get to listen to it and see what nuggets you get from it too. And it's
Absolutely.
and it's funny what you pick out of a book because this is one sentence in one of the last chapters that just happens to hit home, right? It's
Oh
just
man,
something that's a good takeaway. So, anyways, love the conversation. Really love chatting with you. Thanks to everybody who's listened. Make sure you are liking and subscribing and sharing and commenting on YouTube. It's been fun. Loved like little debates in the comment section, which is always
hmm,
entertaining.
yeah.
So that part's been fantastic. So we really appreciate you all. All right. Well, we'll see you all next week. Bye bye.